Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott.
Josh, my friend, something doing the rounds at the minute is the overall confusion around how the Xbox Series S handles backwards compatibility. Now, this got initially reported by Video Game Chronicle. It's been picked up by IGN and done a few laps around the old social interwebs. And I just want to clarify some stuff because it's not as confusing as you might think. If you started reading stuff about how the Series S runs its own version of old school games, 360 games, whatever, and that it's not the version that you expect, whatever. Let's just clear that stuff up. So the way that Xbox have done backwards compatibility so far, if you got an Xbox One X, they have a sticker that says that this game is enhanced for the Xbox One X, which is obviously the generation we're on at the minute. That label, that sticker thing, means that the developers themselves have had some hand in going back to those games and up-resing them. Maybe that's some more texture detail or frame rate data or whatever it is, something that boosts it a little bit with the developer having hands-on. If you're just doing backwards compatibility on a regular Xbox One or an Xbox One S, that's just playing the old game. Like the console itself might, the RAM might help out with performance or something, but the developers haven't had any hand in it. So the thing that's causing a little bit of confusion is that the Xbox Series S, yes, the new one, that isn't the most deluxe one, is running games backwards compatible based on the same the same approach as the Xbox One S. It doesn't have developer input. It doesn't have, the Series S version of old games. It's just playing them the same way as the One S approached it. However, as Microsoft have clarified, the Xbox One S, the way its GPU works, the fact that they've dove into, they have a console that automatically applies things like HDR, variable refresh rates, different things to do with performance and texture filtering, whatever. It'll do all those things automatically. So part of the new sell is that the new console, will still auto-improve your old games in a way that the Xbox One S could never do. Yes. Holy crap, there's a lot of terms, and I hate that we're all just PC gamers now. We've all got to go and look at the sliders and the terminology. I will read a little quick quote, and then eventually you could exist and say some things, JB. But they did outline, this is part of the IGN thing, but Digital Foundry have got involved and clarified some stuff too. But the Series S does have improved texture filtering, higher and more consistent frame rates, faster load times, and auto HDR. Digital Foundry also said that because the GPU is so much more capable, you should be able to clean up some performance issues that might have struggled or been present on the Xbox One S with slowdown, things like that. They could all run noticeably smoother on the new machine. So there is a reason to play backwards compatible stuff on Xbox One S, Xbox Series S, even though it's running them the same way as the Xbox One S. What do you think?
Yes, so just to get this straight, it's like the Xbox One S's approach to backwards compatibility, just a bit better. Is that essentially it? Yes. Well, Scott Tilford, this gives me more of a reason to differentiate at least between the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S. Because, currently there's been a bit of confusion about, well, why would you buy one over the other? What's the exact difference? And for me, that kind of added developer hand to the Xbox Series X's backwards compatibility, at least in some cases, for the first party titles, Gears of War and stuff like that. That is an added edge because that is a really cool way to re-experience those old games. How substantial that's going to be will remain to be seen. Will those kind of added manual touches be enough of a step up from this automatic boost mode, essentially, that the Xbox Series S implements to kind of justify picking up one console over the other? Because right now, we've had these articles, we've had these interviews to go off of to understand the differences between each machine, this generation and the next generation. But I would like to see if they can do it, some kind of confident showing of this is how your old games are going to look on the Xbox Series X, and they're still going to look pretty good in the Series S, but this is exactly how they're going to look there. I need to see it in motion, which we were talking before we started filming, and I did say that's quite hard to do. I think you've seen that over this generation when you get so granular in terms of the features that we're showing off, and when it comes to like HDR, which is difficult to showcase for people who don't have a HDR compatible device, or if you're showing it on something that on a software or kind of service that doesn't support HDR, these are features that can be difficult to show off and kind of like sex up, as it were, from like a marketing perspective. I mean, I love Digital Foundry stuff, but I don't think that's exactly the kind of marketing blitz 30-second TV spot that Microsoft would want from to sell their consoles.
No, and yeah, like you said, you mentioned this before filming. Just for me, I just think that because there's such, like, for example, with the PS4 Pro and when the One S and the One X started being talked about, they don't necessarily drop the ball with it, but you've seen the rise of Digital Foundry like come in to sort of satisfy that demand. People do want to know what their games are going to look like on various different systems and different performances and different ways that they can be shown off. And they did at the big, like, I don't know, I think it was last year now, they did those really short little clips where it was like, this is what the Series X dashboard's going to look like. This is what Gears of War, the original Gears of War, looks like running on Series X or running on next gen. Look at the skies brighter because we've got this auto HDR thing. They could just put some of those videos out, just put something. I mean, if I was them, I would do like a full-on backwards compatible showcase and go, look, like, here's your legacy of Xbox. Here's what we can make it look like. And maybe that is just some side-by-side stuff. But yeah, like, maybe it's hard to make it work for a mass audience, but it's not for them anyway. Like, they're going to be snatching up the Series S regardless. Like, show us what something like brute force looks like in 4K or whatever. I did want to mention one other thing is that Xbox's director of program management, they've been doing demos of the Series S's load times, certain games running on the Series S, without necessarily showing them off on the main YouTube channel or whatever. But he did say that they have a full tech breakdown coming soon. So assumedly they're going to do something regarding this stuff in the future. But I did want to mention in regards to 4K, the Series S isn't capable of creating 4K. It can upscale to 4K. It can't render in 4K, which is one of the major differences between the S and the X. Because from all my research, and I'll probably get savage in the comments again, I'm trying. It seems that the main thing between the Series S and the Series X seems to boil down, and I do mean boil down in console terms. I'm boiling this all the way down, PC people, because it seems like it boils down to storage, RAM, and the ability to render in 4K, which is obviously makes the Xbox Series S incredibly viable because you're going to get all these auto enhancements, the HDR, the variable refresh rates, everything else, all the automatic things that are going to work, and the Series S can run in 1440p at up to 120 frames per second. So it does make that this like really good, next gen machine. But that also means that on the developer side, they do have to try and cater to both sides. And how do they sort of, for example, if you're Ubisoft making Assassin's Creed, how do you maintain the value proposition for that game with all these different, how do you sort of give different amounts of power to the version that could run on the X and still make it so that people who bought in on the S are still feel valued? Like, it's just going to be such a minefield.
It is going to be. When it comes to like that kind of like scalability, I feel like, developers, it's going to be extra work for developers, and I don't kind of wish that on them, but they've done it before. You know what I mean? We've had a certain level of scalability all the way through video games, especially when PC started to kind of like dominate and stuff. We've had these games running on a bunch of different kind of platforms and with a bunch of different features built in. I have a few questions about the Series S in a few ways. One is the kind of like resolution, like you said, it's going to upscale. It's going to do like essentially what the PlayStation 4 Pro does now, and kind of like you push that 1440p resolution up to not native 4K, but something that appears like that, which is kind of that's the reason why I wouldn't buy it personally, because I'm looking for that next step in my machines currently already.
You got all the nits, mate.
Yeah, and again, to compare it to the PlayStation, not that I'm saying the PlayStation 4 Pro is automatically better or anything like that, just that it's the only thing that I have personally that can compare it to. But all of this kind of automatic, up-resing or automatic, boosting sounds like the boost mode on the PlayStation 4 Pro, which for me wasn't awesome. Like, it was fine, it was good, it was welcome in some ways, but it wasn't worth buying one console over the other for, you know what I mean? I don't look at my PlayStation 4 Pro and go, yes, I'm so pleased I bought this for the boost mode. This has made made my life better. And the third worry I have is the storage, because that's only, I think it's 500 gigabytes or something.
512, I think, but I mean, it'll be less than that anyway once the OS is accounted for and stuff like that. So
yeah, exactly. But which for an old digital console is kind of a bit worrying, because I don't know about you, Scott, but even Modern Warfare right now is more or less dominating my entire hard drive on my PlayStation. So I do have.
They said they were going to knock the file size down, but they just haven't at all.
Oh, well, they keep trying to do it. They marginally knock it down with every new update, but even then you have to have like 100 gigabytes to download the file. That's going to make it smaller. It's a complete nightmare and a minefield. But ultimately, I think, all of this has to be taken into consideration of the price. It is ridiculously cheap, the Xbox Series S, and it is such great value for what you're ultimately getting, that I wonder if kind of like these negative aspects or these wonkier aspects that we don't know much about, like just how thorough this kind of, backwards compatibility implementation is going to be, how much it's going to boost games, when will we see it with our own eyes? Like, maybe that's just not something they're worried about, because they're like, that will come in time. Right now, all you need to know is the next gen Xbox is going to set you back £250, and you can play these games at launch, and the rest will, you can find that out yourself. These are just extra bells and whistles, like you said, primarily for the hardcore players, interested in resolutions, interested in these variable refresh rates or frame rate or whatever. Whereas the casual Joe out there just sees an Xbox, sees it's cheap, sees it's got some great games in it.
We should bring in our own Joe Johnston to be casual Joe.
He's already got a role as Banana Joe. He can't play two roles.
But I was thinking, I mean, they're riding so high on the general wave of, oh my God, next gen is available for $300 £300 or whatever at the minute, that they don't want to get in the way of that. Even though a lot of the features that they're talking about, like for me, I get hung up on that stuff. I'm like, well, I want to see your side by sides. I want to see the load times. I want you to zoom in and prove that the frame rate difference is there. That somehow the console is adding that stuff automatically. I want to see all those things. And maybe that just is something that they're just not going to devote that much time to, or a platform to, and someone at Digital Foundry can step in instead. But it's so fascinating, the idea of throwing in an old game and having it up-res to such a degree that it looks like a modern day remaster. Not a remake, not the Activision level, but something that they could put out with some developer insight. That idea of the console sort of doing that automatically is just fascinating. So I think they have more to show off, and like I said, that Jason Ronald said that they are going to do a tech breakdown soon. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Obviously the PS5 thing is on Wednesday as well, so we'll see how that goes. It's all heating up, JP. It's been a while since we've had actual information on these things.
Exactly. I've seen a lot of commenters online say that we're in the end game now, Scott Tailf, and it really feels like it. We're in one of those 40 million different alternate futures where these consoles actually come out. So
just the flood of everything coming down, and just trying to be like, oh, hold on, let me just figure out refresh rates before we go forward. Exactly. But yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below. Where are your general sort of mentalities are on analysing, on reading the terrain going forward as to the Series X and the Series S and their capabilities. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
And we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.